Well, hello and welcome back, my friend. Well, this week I'm joined by James Smith, and James has gone completely through the transformation, right? He was a lawyer, ended up getting into some gambling, and then went through incarceration. But what I want you to take away from this is the transformation that has occurred, that change is possible for all of us, regardless of where we're at, what we've gone through, or are currently going through. So I really hope that from this conversation today, you're going to see hope is even out there in the midst of whatever situation you're confronted with. So, James, how are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great.
Awesome. Well, what does life look like for you today on the professional side of life?
Well, it looks just great. I'm excited where I am, excited about what I'm doing. I retired from the pastorate December of last year, uh, and of course, started a podcast about uh, 4 months before retiring because I wanted to keep my ministry going. So I started that and wanted people to tell their story and share a word of encouragement, inspiration, and hopefully transformation. And that's been going well. I've I've now done over 115 podcasts within the last year. I After I retired from the church, my home church in Lewisburg, North Carolina, lost her pastor abruptly. Preached on that Friday. No, I'm sorry, at a funeral on that Friday. Preached on that Sunday, and that Monday he had passed. And
Hmm.
the deacons called me to come down and help out. So they have asked me to serve as their interim pastor. So I'm still pastoring now. My wife tells me that I'm busier now than I was when I was pastoring. So that's kind of my life. I still do a lot of workshops. As a matter of fact, I've got a workshop to do this coming Saturday. I'll be sharing with some elderly at a church about things that they can do to prepare for their elderly life. And I do a lot of workshops on uh, church conflict. I call it, uh, you know, what we kind of call it, I guess, kind of dealing with these issues in the
Hmm.
church. And that's kind of where I am. I stay very busy. And even when I'm not at the church that I'm interim pastor, I'm still trying to honor some commitments that I had before going there. So I've been called to do quite a few uh, messages for pastors who are on vacation or doing this or that. They asked me to fill in for them. So that's kind of where I am, and just stay busy. My wife and I, get on the road every once in a while. Just came back from Wilmington. We might, I'm here during the week, so I don't have a whole lot to do. We might decide we're going to go to Asheville, where you name it. We just have a great time.
So you're kind of like air quotes retired, right?
Yeah, yeah, that's the way to put it. Uh, she says I should have kept pastoring, but that's where I am. But I'm enjoying it. I really am.
Very cool. So you've had some transition time in there. You've authored 3 books. You're hosting your own podcast. Congratulations on
Thank you.
115 episodes. That's fantastic. And yeah, you're still filling in and doing a lot of stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
that's phenomenal. Um, on the personal side, you mentioned about doing some trips and stuff like that. What does life look like for you on the personal side of life?
Well, the personal side is great. My wife is doing well. We like I said, we go out, we travels. She rides with me to church on Sundays. We make sure we go out to eat. Nobody works, have to come back to try to cook. The kids are all grown. The grandkids will come over every once in a while. They don't like to be around us too much because we want them to do the right thing, so they go home. but but that's kind of where it is. we'll take a trip. I think we've taken two. We've ridden out. I think about three times this year. Like we went to I know Williamsburg, been to Wilmington, Asheville and what have you. And sometimes it's just a matter of just riding out, to go out to eat. We'll do that on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, I was just talking to my wife a few minutes ago. I said, "You want to go to breakfast tomorrow morning?" That kind of thing. We just
Yeah,
enjoy ourselves. But life is really good. I have to admit, I can't complain at all about a thing. I've been blessed. Um,
that's
family,
cool.
family's been blessed, and I have nothing to say but thank you
Yeah.
for the good life.
And yeah, and it's awesome for where you're at because I mean, like, that has not been the path and the journey. And so
Mhm.
somebody could look at you and just go, James, you've had it made forever. But it's like in the journey, there's been those bumps and detours and kind of road closed and adjustments that you've gone through. So when you had first started out, you were a lawyer for a while. How did you um, get to being a lawyer? And was that something that it was like since you were a kid, you were just like, this is the path I want to go, and you went for it, or how did that develop?
Well, I'd always said I wanted to be a doctor, uh, but I went to a school in kind of in the country, rural. Didn't have all of the, uh, I guess, information that you probably needed to have, and so I didn't have the best background in the sciences. So when I went off to college, uh, I decided I was going to major in accounting, and that's what I was doing. Uh, but I had a friend who decided to go to law school, and the law school was at the same university where we were attending, and so he went in on a combined program. The combined program was you got to go in at the end of your junior year, so you could graduate from undergraduate school and do 1 year of law school. And so he told me about it. I said, that sounds exciting. I knew some lawyers in the hometown, and I said, I think I'm going to apply to go to law school. And so that's what I did. And so I didn't go to undergraduate school thinking about law, but after talking with him and finding out, seeing the guys over at the law school, and they looked like they were having a good time, I said, I think that is where I want to go. So I applied and I was accepted, and so I entered law school and um, graduated from undergraduate school with my Bachelor of Science in Commerce, and I received 1 year of law school at the same time. So I actually finished law school in 6 years. Finished that at law school in 6 years rather than 7 years, 4 years, and then an additional 3 years. I did it in 6 years, and of course, uh, that's where I was. I came out and worked over in Raleigh as deputy director of Wake Up County Opportunities. Uh, I went down to college and I taught there for a while, and then I took the bar, and of course passed the bar. Went back to my hometown, where it was a very small town, and I was the um, actually the first and only African American lawyer to practice in my hometown, Lewisburg. And at the time, I was really the youngest African American lawyer practicing in the state of North Carolina. I was 26 years of age. And, just enjoying life. I thought I was on top of the world, look cocky, how we can get. And so that was me. I developed a reputation of being a very good lawyer, but I was
Mhm.
cocky. You couldn't tell me too much. I knew I had made it, and only one from my family who had you know had done that. Uh, Nobody else had gone to law school or accomplished any, second. I call any degrees other further than the first 4 years of college. I had art who did that, but other than that, you know, that was my life. Got off into gambling with a few other lawyers who were uh, gambling. I was playing poker, and I started playing poker. There's a long story behind it, but when I first started, I really enjoyed it, because I knew a little bit about gambling. Even in high school, I would go down to Lewisburg. We were from a rural area, but we would catch the bus and ride down to in the city of Lewisburg and go to the pool hall and play some pool and uh, play for 50 cents or a dollar, that kind of thing. Enjoy
Yeah.
myself. I was having a great time. And so when I got into poker, it was just a step up from my gambling, because I already knew about gambling. And of course, I really enjoyed it. We had lots of fun. We had a little, uh, I call circles that we went and we'll go from one town to the other one where the guys were living, and their significant others would, fix, the drinks and the meals. And, we get there on a Friday and might not leave until sometime Monday, take a nap on the couch if we wanted to take a nap. And, you know, if we got broke, other lawyers or bondsmen, because they're all professional, would let you have money. You know, I would let them have money. So we were just having fun. Won money, lost money, no problem. And I think somewhere along the line, it it the love of it kind of took over. It was like I really needed to be there, and I didn't know when to stop. And I found myself going down, going down, going down. And when I knew anything, I had lost everything that I had accumulated, properties. My wife of 5 years and I separated, divorced, and it just was a downhill spiral. And so I became relatively depressed and just didn't see my way out, or didn't think I had a way out. I'm certain there was a way out, but I didn't think I had a way out. So I contemplated committing suicide. I never forget. I got up that morning and I pulled my pistol out of the drawer and headed to the office. Got to the office and sat there and was really contemplating just taking my life, because I just felt like I had messed completely up. I didn't know how to deal with it. At least at that time, I didn't know how to deal with it.
Mm.
If it was now, I've been perfect fine. But at that time, I didn't know how to deal with it. But my mom, I'm an only child, and my mom kept coming into my mind. What would my mom do? How she's gonna make it? And I think that kind of helped me abandon that idea. And so I just got in my car, start riding around. I guess it was probably about 10 o'clock. Was getting hungry because I just left out of the house without eating any breakfast that day, because I was just really down. It was, uh, and I got on 85, started riding, and ended up at a restaurant in a little place called Oxford, North Carolina. And while I was eating, just looked out of the window, and here is the Central Carolina Bank. And obviously, my mind just started roving. Just like it's oh boy, if I could just get my hands on 50, $100,000, I could just pay off all my bills, uh, pay off all my debts, get some of my properties back, and then I could just start all over like nothing happened. Crazy thinking, but that was what was going through my mind.
Right.
I rode, I got out and rode by the bank a couple of times and kept riding through the city, just thinking. And then something just hit me and said, heck, get caught or not. I pulled right up to the front of the bank, hopped out, ran in, said, stick up, give me your money. They threw a bag of money over. I put it in the car and took off. When I tell you the next story, you're going to laugh. The next story is really funny. I drove about a, I drove for about I guess about a half a mile and got pulled over by a police officer. Now, I was known all through the five county area, the district, what we call five county district, which was the ninth judicial district, mainly because I had run for district court judge, so I was very popular. Everybody knew me. If the law had been like it is now, I would have been the first African American district court judge in the district back in 1976. I ran the primary and I got 47% of the vote. You know,
Mm.
Other opponent got only 40%, but in the runoff, I got beat with another white gentleman who was a lawyer in another county. Uh, so everybody knew me. And when this officer came up to the car, obviously the bag of money had exploded. They had put some dye in the bag, so it had exploded. And I trying to figure out what my car was shaking where all of the smoke was coming from. My eyes started running water. And then when I looked in the back, I realized what had happened. I got out, took a bag of money, and I threw it out across the street, out across the field, and just got back in the car and was sitting there. And so when the police officer came up to me, first thing he said, "Lawyer, are you okay?" And he could tell that my eyes was running water. I said, "Yeah, I'll be all right." He said, "You sure?" I said, "Yeah, I'm sure." He knew me, and I recognized him. He said, "Okay, go ahead on." He let me go. I pulled off, and I guess I went for about another uh, half a mile. It's kind of hard to determine that distance. Half a mile to a mile, and I got pulled over by the highway patrol. And I just got out of the car then and was walking back to the back of the car, and highway patrol stopped a little ways back. And by that time, the officer who had seen me before came by and hollered at the one and said, "I just stopped him. He's okay." And the highway patrol told me, "Okay, go get on back in the car. Go ahead on." I got, this is all this truth. It's funny. I told you it'll be something to laugh at. And so I got in the car. But then it all started coming together. I knew that they knew who it was, they knew me. And so I just decided, to go to my former partner's office. And we had already separated, gone our separate ways. That was because of my gambling too. And but I went to his office, told the secretary what had happened. My former partner was not in; he was in D.C. at the time. And so when I said to her what happened, she said, "What?" I told her, I said, "I threw my whole law practice down the drain." She said, "No,"
Mm.
she didn't believe me. She just didn't believe that. She said, I said, "Yeah." I said, "I threw my whole law practice down the drain." And she said, "No, you did." She thought I was really joking. And so I said, "Call Frank Balance." and he was a lawyer in another town that was about 18 miles away. So she called him. He came up, and by the time he came up, one of my friends who was a doctor came over. Because everybody was getting called, and all this crazy stuff had happened to me.
Right.
And so he examined me, and by that time, a lawyer had gotten there, and the swarm of officers pulled up in the backyard of my former partner's office. My lawyer went out, and they asked if I was there. He said yes, he's there. He's here. He's ready to turn himself in. They allowed me to ride with my lawyer back over to Oxford before the magistrate, and of course they placed me under a $100,000 bond. And because it was such a, I would say now thinking back on it, because it was me, and it was so out of character, they thought I must have had a mental breakdown. So the next day,
Mm.
they had me to go before the judge, and they, you got to know how I must be feeling, because all these folks I know well, I'm practiced law before the judge and all of this. And so I'm sitting up there, and so the judge, I never forget Judge Hopgood. We talk even sometime now. He's not doing well at all, but he ordered me to go to Dorothea Dix Miller Hospital for a 6 week observation. I stayed there about 3 weeks, and I just, during that time that I was there, that's what I did, all the reflection. There was nothing else to do but think.
Mm.
My whole life just flashed against me, what I had done. I had thrown my whole life away. And uh, I think it was at that time, when my faith just kind of kicked in. My mom was very dedicated Christian. And it, I was always in church, but I had just kind of done my own thing, but I knew, you know, I had faith, and it kicked in. And so I just say, anything that has done this to me, I just got to give it up. And I just instantaneous said, hey, I'm not going to drink any more strong drinks. I'm going to not gamble anymore. It's all gone. I'm finished with it. And believe it or not, that was it. I knew I was
Mm.
going to get some time. I didn't even worry about it at all. Uh, all I wanted to do was go ahead and get it behind me. And that's what I did. I went through the system without any infraction whatsoever. As a matter of fact, to tell you this, and this is something that would be kind of hard to believe nowadays, because I'm certain they're not doing that anymore. But when I went to Ashland, Kentucky, I got a job working in a adult education uh, um, with the teacher as an assistant to the adult education teacher. I worked at a chaplain's office. My record was so clean until I got involved with the prison fellowship ministry. Um, they allowed me to go out on two furloughs. One, I went
Mm.
to Starlestown, Pennsylvania, and the other one, I went to Washington, D.C. on a seminar with Prison Fellowship. Now, when I went, the second time I went out by myself, no escort. They trusted me to leave, fly to
Wow.
D.C., and fly back to the prison. My record was such that they wouldn't even tell inmates uh, who would inquire about me. Everybody thought that I had gone back to court for something, because they didn't want the inmates to know that I was, out by myself. And I did
Right.
it. And then after 4 years in Ashland, I got transferred to the camp in Petersburg, and from there home. No infraction during the whole period I was down. No write up at all. Got up, was on probation for the next 10 years. After 2 years on probation, that was cleared up. The judge, the same judge and clerk that knew me well, issued an order allowing me to be reinstated, my voting privileges, and all of that kind of stuff. And after 2 years, I was back going, working back in the law office. And I don't want to tell you where I went from there. I mean, my life is just, when I got out, I want to tell you this part because when I got out, my mom said to me this. She said, son, now you can lie out in the ditch if you want to. You can put your head in the sand if you want to. But all folk gonna do is come by and kick more dirt on you. They're gonna put your head further in the sand. But if you get up, some of these same folk will give you a helping hand. That was the one time I took my mom at her word. I didn't keep my head in the sand, and I didn't stay in a ditch. I went back to school. I received my master's of divinity degree. I started going part time. In the midst, I married my present wife in 1990. And as a matter of fact, July of this year was 33 years. Uh,
Congratulations.
Thank you. And of course, I ended up getting my doctor of ministry. In between all of that, I got called to a church that nobody thought would ever happen with the background that I had. Stayed at this church, traditional missionary Baptist church, for 32 plus years.
Wow.
My life. I'll talk about anything else you want to ask me in between.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's jump back a bit to like, so you were feeling depressed. I mean, it sounds like there was a desperation for like, I'm in a hole.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a way out. And then it was like, okay, this is not a logical step, but it seems like the only step that's available to me.
Mm-hmm.
As you look back at it now, like, do you see that there were other options? And how do you know, talk to other men that are like, oh my gosh, James, I don't know what to do with this situation. How can you see beyond the, you know, the stress, the desperation, kind of the walls are closing in type of feeling? How do you look for stuff beyond that where it's like this is a viable option, but you're just kind of closed off, almost like a horse race, a racehorse rather, with like blinders on? How do you look for those other alternatives?
Okay, I can answer that question, but it's going to let me digress just a little bit, and then I'll get
Okay.
to where I thought that my problem was that I was a compulsive gambler. Okay,
Mm.
but I knew that I didn't have any more urge to gamble because that had happened before I went in. When I was in the mental hospital, it just faith kicked in. I said, no more. Anything that got me here, I don't want it anymore. I'm finished with it. Um, and while I was out, after I had been released, I called Gambling Anonymous because I wanted to go in, talk with the guys. It was not it was a Gambling Anonymous a place in Chapel Hill, and the director said to me, he said, "Are you still a compulsive gambler?" I say, "No, I'm not a compulsive gambler anymore." And he says, "Well, I don't know if the guys would appreciate talking to you because we really believe that once a gambler, compulsive gambler, always a compulsive gambler, very much like an alcoholic. Once an alcoholic, always a. I understood it. I had no problem with that, but I knew within myself that I had no more desire to gamble. period. It was that playing poker was over. It just was not there. And so when COVID came in, I decided that look, I'm around the house, not doing anything. So that's when I decided to write my second book, Deal by Me, second edition, a self evaluation. And I wanted to share what I had learned from what I went through. And in the process of doing this, I was taking a very good, what I call a self evaluation of my life. Uh, how I got to where I am, and all of the questions I was trying to answer, because I wanted to show what I learned from what I'd gone through. And I concluded during the time that I was writing that book that my problem was not that I was a compulsive gambler, but my problem was I was afraid to fail. I hope you understand what I'm saying.
Hmm.
I was afraid to fail. And now getting to answer your question, I was the first and only African American lawyer in Lewisburg, North Carolina. I was this first youngest African American lawyer practicing in the state of North Carolina at the time. Uh, and I had now been practicing about 10 years and I'm almost down. It was just like I couldn't accept that. It was just like, boy, I don't know how I'm going to do this. Now as I reflect back on it, I had some alternatives. I could have gone to my granddad. If my granddad owned, well, I couldn't have gone to him because he had passed. But my aunts and uncles, we inherited over 500 acres of land. So maybe they weren't cash rich, but they could have, made certain that I would have been okay. I just said, look, I done messed up. You know, uh, I need I need some help. So that wasn't an alternative. But the alternative to me was not viable because in my mind, I'm thinking that I ought to be the one that they are coming to, not me going to them. Are you follow where I'm coming from? And so
Yeah.
that's kind of where I messed up at. I just couldn't see myself, going to anybody because of who I was, and that was not the case. But as I look back on it now, that certainly would have been something that I would have done. But I'll be very honest with you, I don't know that that would have helped me. I think that I needed to still get that sentence that I got. Now, I hate to tell that to somebody because nobody wants to go through that. I hate to tell that, but for me, because if I had gotten the help, if I had gotten the money, it would have been the same way. I wouldn't have learned my lesson. I would have continued to gamble. I would have continued to do these crazy things, and I would have just messed up that money just like I did the other money. But the fact that I had to go all the way to the bottom and then say, "Oh, how did I get here?" was what saved me.
Gotcha. So does the self reflection and the self awareness, does that help in that kind of situation? So if we go back and it's like, oh my gosh, James, you're facing those same things. Do you think having been, self aware and reflecting on the situation where you were at would have been a helpful component even when you're confronting that challenge? Or is that something that's helpful only when you're, not in that valley, in that challenge?
I know where you're coming from, and I know what you're asking me, but I'll be relatively honest.
Hmm.
For me at that moment, I don't know if I would have changed.
Yeah.
You know, and for some people, it would have, they could have changed, but for me, I needed that knockdown, and I hesitate to say that because that sounds so, you know, but it's what got me because I'll be very honest, I just know if I had gotten my hands or my family had gone to the bank and gave me $50,000, $75,000 and say, look, go pay this guy and get your property back, pay off these debts and what have you, I would have done it, but I would have still been going to these poker games. I wouldn't have stopped. When I think back on it, even now, I would not have stopped. And I needed that. I just needed it, and
Yeah.
I got it, and I don't regret a moment of it. I don't. Now I'll tell you this. I don't want to go through it again. I wouldn't want to go through it again. Okay, but I needed it. Okay, I
Yeah.
needed it. It's what.
Yeah. I think there's certain parts of like the journey that sometimes, I know just like you talked about, James, I was not in a place to hear the truth,
Mhm.
much less to act on it, even if I did go, hey, yeah, that sounds good. Um, I needed to get to a point where it's like I was willing to hear it and then to take the appropriate action. Um, but it's like still like that self-awareness.
Mhm.
I thought I knew myself.
Mhm.
I was that prideful and egotistical that it's like, what can you tell me, James?
Mhm.
Um,
I know.
you know,
I know.
um, you've been there, you
Oh
get
yeah,
it.
I know exactly. I know, and that's where I was. Pride had
Yeah,
taken over. Like you said, my egos was there, cockiness. All of that. I just had it. And you just they couldn't tell me nothing there. What can anybody else in this Lewisburg town tell me? I'm this lawyer, and nobody else has ever practiced African American lawyer here, and I'm here, and I'm the first, and all over the state, everybody know me, and I've done this, I've done that. You can't tell me nothing, and so I just needed to be knocked down. I'll be very honest with you,
right.
and I got knocked down, but then after I got knocked down, it really helped me to see it and pull it all together, and then I was able to do what I needed to do.
Yeah. I can look back and see that there were times where I just repeated the same mistake over and over. It was like, are you not learning the lesson? Nope, apparently not.
Yep.
So it comes back to that same like
Mhm.
self-awareness you're
Oh
talking
yeah.
about, right?
Yep.
It's like if I had looked back and gone, huh,
Hmm.
I continue to be in the same place
Yep.
out of the same thing. It's almost like going into a roundabout
That's right.
and just circling and circling and circling and going, yeah, I'll get to where I'm going.
Hmm.
No, you won't.
Oh yeah.
It's not until you exit from that roundabout and quit doing the Groundhog Day repetition.
Exactly right. Exactly. That's exactly right.
Hmm. So you ended up continuing on, got into the pastorate, and then through this stuff, how have you seen like that change for you continue? It doesn't sound like you stopped. Like, hey, I'm out. I'm done.
Uh,
It
You
sounds
know.
like you continued to grow. Like
Oh,
what?
I did. In between,
Okay.
and I'll tell you what happened. What I've done. Let's see when I got out. I
Well, I guess
obviously.
like how did you continue to grow? You know what I
Oh,
mean? Like what tools? How did you, like on your shirt there, your three things are encouraging, inspiring, and transforming.
yeah.
How did you continue to transform yourself and your life from that spot?
Well, I had a lot of encouragement now. I had a lot, even lawyers uh, encouraged me. Lawyers were there for me when I got out. When I got out, went to the halfway house. I had to have a job. The next day, went out looking for a job. The first place I went to was the courthouse. when I went to the courthouse, there was a lawyer there practicing who had been practicing probably about uh, 5, 6 years before I started practicing, knew me well, and I just told him I needed a job, and he told me to come by the office. I went by the office the next day. I started working the next day.
Hmm.
Okay, so I've had the breaks. I I went to became moderator of the association that my church is in, and how I start pastoring my church is that some of these same folk who knew me, new members at the church, and they knew that my life was changed, and they saw what I was trying to do, and they recommended me. Ministers got to know me, recommended me, and I became the pastor. And I've had people tell me all the time, boy, I don't know, uh, this that's just unusual. Church uh, employs somebody who has robbed a bank. That's just out, you know. But they did, and it was, and this was a traditional missionary Baptist church with about 200 members, active members of about 100 on Sunday morning. So it was a well established church. Uh, and I became moderator of the association that my church belonged, which consisted of 42 more churches. So I was the moderator of that association. Not only was I became the moderator of that association, uh, when the president of the General Baptist State Convention was elected back in 1998, uh, he chose me as moderator of moderators for the General Baptist State Convention. So I was over all of the moderators in the whole state of North Carolina.
Hmm.
Tell you one more story, just tell you how I made this journey. Uh, I went to visit a friend in Lewisburg, I'm sorry, in Henderson, who was a lawyer during the time I was practicing. And he told me, he said, Smitty, he said, why don't you check with the state bar and try to do CLE? I think lawyers would really appreciate your story. You know, they just need to hear, your story. I think it'd be very motivating for them and inspiring. And he said to me, he said, Jim Blackburn is doing that. And you don't know Jim, and he doesn't mind me telling us, but he was a very prominent lawyer, uh, and of course, uh, got charged with embezzlement. And he ended up serving some time, and the bar allowed him to do CLE. So he had been doing CLE probably about 10 years earlier. And he
And
was
what is CLE?
continuing legal education for
Okay.
the North
Thank you.
for the North Carolina State Bar, and he had been doing it about 10 years prior to this time. And so I told him, I told my friend, I said, well, Jim is doing this. I said, but his crime was not a violent one. I said, mine was violent. I doubt the bar was going to let me do it. I came back and talked to my wife, and my wife said, well, you don't know. You don't have your license anyway, so they can't do nothing. I said, no, made a whole lot of sense. So I applied. I applied to the North Carolina State Bar to become a sponsor of continuing legal education. And they responded and told me that I should hear from them about 2 weeks. 2 weeks came. I hadn't heard anything. Now, Mike, this is going to be interesting to you. When that 2 weeks come, I hadn't heard anything. I'm sitting there saying, I know they're going to probably deny me because all they can see is an African American guy who robbed a bank, and that's not a pretty sight. Okay, so you know what I did?
Right.
I got dressed, got put on my 3-piece suit, got me a haircut. I got a little word said "talk down," and I got in my car and I drove over to the North Carolina State Bar. I asked to speak with somebody that was in continuing legal education. A female lady came down, and I could tell when she looked at me that her whole demeanor changed. And she said to me, she said, Dr. Smith, she said, I promise you, you'll hear something from us within the next 3 days. The next 3 days, I got a letter from them saying, you are approved as a sponsor of continuing education, ethics, mental health, and substance abuse for the North Carolina State Bar. That I just became the second. I just became the second lawyer, disbar lawyer, to be a sponsor of continuing legal education for the North Carolina State Bar. Ethics is what I taught, and mental health and substance abuse. Nobody but Jim Blackburn was one, and I was the other one. And the whole state of North Carolina. I did that for 11 years. 11 years, and I only stopped. I could have been doing it right now. I only stopped when COVID came in, because when COVID came, I just didn't want to be traveling, over the state again. But I went all over the state. I mean, from Asheville to Elizabeth City, you name it, doing CLE. So that's the way my life was going. I sometimes I sit back and tell my wife, when am I gonna stop? I was just, it was going great. Yeah.
Well, I love the way you took action and went to find out what's going on, right? You didn't just, like your mom had talked about, right? You didn't just roll over, let it happen. You went and figured out, hey, where do things stand and what do I need to do? So yeah, taking action makes a huge difference.
Big difference. I had to do the same thing for seminary. When I first applied to go to Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary, the first time I applied, they didn't accept me. I didn't get upset because I knew why they didn't accept me. Okay.
Right.
And in my mind, I'm saying to myself, they want to see, am I persistent? And I applied the following semester, and I was accepted.
There you go. Oh, man. James, I appreciate it.
No problem.
Hey, how can men connect with you outside of this podcast, my friend?
Well, they can go to my website, which is www.dealbyme. Everything is dealbyme.com. Okay. Now you might want to know why the deal by me come from. Let me just tell you that. If you're playing cards and I was playing poker, and you don't want your next hand, you said deal by me. That means that I'm finished with it. So that's how that name comes from. Deal by me. So go to the www.dealbyme.com, and you can contact me on the contact page and submit it. Ask me the question you want to. If you want a virtual seminar, you can sign up for that, and we can just talk and go through, things that got me through, how I can help you, and what have you. My books are on my website. My T-shirt is on my website, and of course, all of my books are also on Amazon.com. That's so anybody wants to contact me, that's how they can do it.
Awesome. Well, James, I appreciate it, my friend. Thank you very much.
No problem. I enjoyed being with you.
Likewise.